Welcome to today's webcast on taking real-time control and getting improved visibility with your budget fund expenditure. Before we get started today, I'm going to be going over some kind of housekeeping items and introducing the topic, and then I will flip it over to Tanya, who will be doing the heavy lifting in today's webcast. Before we get started, if you do have any kind of audio or display difficulties, please refer to the right-hand pane. That has a questions tab. We have a few moderators standing by not only to facilitate questions throughout today's webcast, but we will be able to help you with any kind of technical difficulties that you may encounter. Just a quick overview about who Avantico is. We recently rebranded from an organization you may be familiar with, AX Mentor. We were founded in 2006. Ever since, we've been a certified Microsoft partner. We are members of the TAP program, so we are early adopters. We do drink our own champagne here. We roll out product versions internally, learn them from A to Z, and basically then take them to market for our install base. We do have members of our team who are MVPs and AXUG CRMUG board members. We're very active within those channels. We have offices in San Diego, California, where we are headquartered, and then really spanning up the West Coast through Temecula, Irvine, Bellevue, Washington, and we also have a global presence with European locations in Copenhagen, Denmark, and London, UK. Our vertical expertise, we do have a public sector practice. We also do have practice groups around manufacturing, distribution, professional services, and retail e-commerce. As mentioned before, we all are a full Dynamics shop. We do focus on everything within the stack, from 365 services to AX and CRM services, spanning from proactive and reactive support desks, roadmap planning, solution discovery, all the way through development, implementation, trainings, and licensing assistance. As mentioned before, today's webcast will be around our advanced public sector module. We do have a few other add-on products that tack onto AX and 365, and that is our QAC solution, or quality addressing for 365 and AX, where we have partnered in with Experian, and our AX admin and AX workflow mobile applications, which are ready for the AX Dynamics 2012 stack. With that being said, my name is Amir Kashniati. I'm the marketing and sales lead at Avantico, joined here with Tanya Todd, who, as mentioned before, is doing the heavy lifting. And with that, I think we're ready to pass the reins over to you, Tanya.
Thank you very much, Amir. Good morning, everybody. So today our focus is around the advanced public sector module that we've created to support some pain points and help those folks who are in public sector with their reporting and deep insights into functionality within the public sector space. So today we're going to cover the advanced public sector module, what is it, and then we'll review reports and inquiries that are available, and then we'll do some demos and show you what it looks like inside of AX. So the advanced public sector module is really a one-stop budget overview. So budget holders can view expenditures by financial dimension or budget group in real time. So you'll see that as we move through our demos. It allows decision makers to be empowered so they can really see in granular detail the information into their expenditures by financial dimension or by budget group. It allows people to stay within budget so they can proactively manage their own budgets. And you'll see also that templates can be used to set up information that is relevant to each person in the organization. So again, it allows people to react quickly to stay in control of their budgets. The inquiries and reports that are available in the Advanced Public Sector module include Public Sector Budget Analyzer inquiries and reports. So that is budgeting by financial dimension. So we can look at both the expense budget analysis, the expense budget with carry forward analysis, revenue budget analysis, and operating results analysis by financial dimension. And we also have the ability to view budgets by budget group. In addition to that, there is some public sector purchase order payment status report functionality that allows us to see purchase order lines with financial dimensions. So the first area we're going to cover is budgeting by financial dimension. Budgeting by financial dimension provides budget summary at the line item detail information in an easy to read format. It also allows us to save setups as templates for easier end user navigation. There's multiple levels of grouping and subtotaling, as you'll see. You have simple and advanced sorting capabilities. You can export these reports with just a one-button click to Excel or CSV. You can also schedule it to export to a file at certain intervals, and you can save the reports to view later. So if you have a specific report you need to run, you can run it on a schedule, and that report can then be viewed at a later date. So it provides you sort of a point-in-time view of that particular report. So I'm going to go ahead and start with budgeting by financial dimension with providing you with a demo. So I'm just going to flip over to my AX now. There's my monkeys, and I'm in the home module. So I'm showing you a demo environment of AX 2012 R3. So this is Microsoft Dynamics AX in the public sector space. So where we're going to start is we're going to start by viewing the budgeting by financial dimension. I will point out that the public sector functionality that we have created is integrated seamlessly inside of AX. So it is look and feel just like your regular AX, and it is its own module. So you'll see here at the bottom of my list, I've got the advanced budgeting and procurement. So that function is going to bring me into this new module, where I've got these options to launch inquiries, reports, and so on. So this layout, if you are a typical AX user, should be very familiar to you, where you'll have your common area, your periodic features, inquiries, and reports. Again, in this particular demo environment, I have administrative rights, so I have access to all of the functions that are available, but there are security roles available for this area to control who can run reports in each area and also who can access the setup information. So there are security roles available to assist with that. Moving ahead into the budgeting by financial dimension, the first area I want to focus on, I'm going to focus on the inquiries. All of these inquiries that I'm going to show also exist in reports. So if I drop down that report menu, you'll see that same functionality there in the reports. But in this case, just for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to use the inquiries. What I'm going to show you is the expense budget analysis. So these features are very familiar, should be very familiar to you if you're an active user of the budgeting module. They do look similar but provide more detail than the standard functionality that's available from Microsoft. So where I'm going to start in the expense budget analysis, and it's just pulled it onto my other window, so let me drag this over and resize it. This is what the form looks like when I launch the expense budget analysis inquiry. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you can use templates to save configurations so that it's very easy for a user to pull up what's relevant to them. In an organization, especially a public sector organization, certain individuals may be responsible for different areas of the budget. And in that case, there's not really a point to be looking at an area of the budget that's not relevant to you. So these filters in the templates allow us to see what is very important to us as a user of the report. So we've just got some examples here, and I'm just going to pull up business unit managers. So this is just one scenario where a business unit manager is interested in seeing the particular budget by fund, by business unit, and by main account. So again, we can apply filters here. What we can also do is use different financial dimension sets. So I will cover that in just a moment, but you do have the availability to choose any financial dimension set you're interested in. So what we'll start here doing is just getting some information up on the screen. So I'm going to quickly click Calculate in the Analysis tab. What that Calculate does is it calculates the information on the fly and it brings up my display. So you can see here what I'm showing is Fund, Business Unit, Main Account. And I'm just going to scroll over to the right a little bit. And then I've got my original revised budget, actual expenditures, encumbrances, pre-encumbrances, remaining, and percent used. So that is obviously very important. How much budget do I have left? What is my remaining budget? In addition to this, you'll notice that I've got hot links here on all of the information. So for pre-encumbrances, things like purchase requisitions, if I want to see what's making up that particular figure, I can just click on it and here we go, the window that's open. It's providing me additional information. So I've got a transaction number, the date, the dimension values, the amount, and a direct link to the original document. So if I wanted to see exactly what made up the values of that particular line, I can open that up, and here I can see that this was me in the demo environment looking to purchase some computers. So that is where my pre-encumbrance is coming from. So again, I've got drill down capabilities at all levels. And also in here, in this area, I will see if that pre-encumbrance is relieved by an encumbrance. So if that purchase requisition has been approved and created an actual purchase order, then you'll see a reference transaction that also is referencing that. So let's pull up some encumbrances. So here I've got some purchase orders, and again, the same thing. Maybe we'll pick a different one there where there's a couple. Here we go. So I've got a window open. It's just opening in my other monitor, so I have to move it over. Again, where I've got a couple of different purchase orders. I've got the details of those purchase orders, and then the reference transaction. So if it's invoiced, if it's canceled, and so on. I'm going to see that information in the reference transactions. I've also got the same link here back to the original document. So I'm able to go back and see the original document on the fly as I need. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this. So again, from this window, I am looking right now at the template for business unit managers. And as you can see, I can see the breakdown for this particular budget in my demo environment by fund, by business unit, and by main account. Now, if I was interested instead to see this by a different set of financial dimensions, I'm going to expand the General tab now. The financial dimension set here is listed, Fund, Department, and Main Account. So I can drop that down at any time, and let's say instead of looking at the Fund, Department, and Main Account, I wanted to see the, pardon me, I'm just going to scroll up a little bit here, the business unit, the fund, and the department. So I could flip that. You can see now my grid has been cleared, and I can just click on the calculate button, and there I go. So the same information, but now I'm viewing it in a different way. I'm viewing it instead by business unit, by fund, and by department. So again, this is a very dynamic form. I could easily on the fly change the criteria or change the functionality to show me a different collection of financial dimension sets as needed. And just with the click of the button, that information is updated and displayed to me. What I can also do within this area, let's say that instead of looking at this department, what I really want to see is a sum up to just the business unit and fund levels. I don't want to see the department here. I've got this little toggle key here, this toggle toggle arrow, and if I click left, you can see that that's toggled it up just to the business unit fund, and if I click it one more time, it's toggled it right up to the business unit. So I've got the availability here to toggle up and down as I need to get a better view of what information is in there at different levels of those financial dimensions. What I will also point out is there are also links here for budget, actual, encumbrance, and so on. And those are exactly the same as these blue hot links here. So there's no difference, just whichever you prefer when you're opening up those drill downs, how to get there. You have the choice in which direction to take. Again, what you'll see at the bottom here, you've always got a total section, and I can expand and collapse that. So if I want a little more real estate on my screen, I can collapse that total section, and I've got a little more detail here in the analysis. So the analysis is really where you're looking. Again, up here in the general section, this is setups, and I will come back to this in a little more detail. I've also got some filtering. So if there is an area that's specifically interesting to me and I wanted to filter down on it, I can add filters into this form, and we'll cover that in just a moment. The analysis is really where we're getting the information in our granular detail. And what most people are interested in, again, is what's remaining and what is the percentage of that budget used. I've got some additional options here so I can show the name. This is adding the actual business unit name, fund name, so the dimension names that are relevant. Again, if you're not used to using the numerical or alphanumeric or however you set it up, abbreviation for the financial dimension, allowing you to see the names can certainly make it easier when you're looking for your information. When I'm looking at what I'm interested in, I do have a one-button click. I can export to CSV. I can export to Microsoft Excel. So if I export to Excel, I just click the button, and here in my other window, let me just drag it over. That information has just been dropped into Excel for me. So if I wanted to do any additional math, if I wanted to do some additional details and sums and so on, I do have the ability to drop that directly into Excel and use that functionality from there. Okay, it can also print this report. So this will print, and using standard Microsoft Dynamics printing options allow you to select a printer. I could also save the report. So this saves the report internally in an area in the advanced public sector module, and will allow me to find that report later on and review it. So again, when we click calculate, that's calculated the figures at the time that that report was ran. So it may be something I want to come back to, and I want to see exactly what it was at that particular moment. Now, I will caution you, however, if you're using these hot links from there, from a saved report or from a calculated report, those hot links are always going to be real time. So you will be looking at the information in there that's real time. So in that case, you may want to recalculate if you've had a lot of transactions ongoing in the background to make sure that you're looking at the current view. All right, so let's talk about setting up the report. When I came into this form, I used a template. So templates are a way, as I had pointed out before, to really easily set up the configuration of the report or inquiry and pull that up again and again without having to make the selections of what details you're interested in the report. Keeping in mind that typically what one person in an organization is interested in their budget is usually not the same as what another person might be interested in. So I'm going to drop down the general form here, and we'll talk a little bit about this area. So again, when I come in here at any time, I can select any financial dimension sets that are available to me. And then on the analysis tab, recalculate, and again, I'm recalculating the view that I'm seeing as well as the figures within that analysis area. I do have the option to show a certain posting layer. So if you're using posting layers, you've got the option there. I can also hard select my dates. So in this case, I've just defaulted to current year using a date period code. If I'm not using date period codes, you'll see that I can enter a from and a to date. So I do have the option there to enter specific dates that I'm interested in when I'm running my budget. So if it's just last month or last quarter, for example, I can either select a last month or last quarter date period code if I have one set up. If there's not one set up though, I could just enter in the hard dates and the report will calculate based on those dates. I've also got some grouping, so how do I want the functions to group, and some printing options. So printing options for if I'm printing the report onto paper or using the print functionality. So once I've got all that set up, I may also want to look into filtering. So if I'm running this report now as it stands, and let me just reselect the current year here, and calculating this report, it's showing me all of the information. Now let's say I am actually only specifically interested in Department 100. I do have the ability to add financial dimension filters. Financial dimension filters, in this case, it's showing me all of the available financial dimensions, and I can just select the relevant department from the drop-down. And that'll allow me to filter, and if I recalculate now, I'm only going to look at the Department 100. So again, when we're setting up templates or when we're running this report the first time, it makes sense to spend a little bit of time to verify what exactly it is you need to look for so that you can tailor this to yourself. I also have the ability to flip this to an advanced query. So an advanced query allows me to identify a much more robust query, and this, hopefully if you're familiar with AX, will look familiar to you. This is an AX query window where I can build a query to select, for example, certain ledger accounts, a range of ledger accounts, a range of business units, or a range of departments, and so on. So I can build a more dynamic query using the advanced query feature. But if it's just a simple query I'm looking for, the dimension filtering of simple will also do the job. So let me go ahead and just clear that out. Dimension grouping also allows me to select which dimensions I'm grouping by. So right now, because I've selected department and main, it's defaulted to grouping by both of them. But if I only wanted to group by department, for example, I can move main out of the selected and into the possible area, and I can group just by department. So I've got a lot of features here about how exactly I want this inquiry to look when I'm running it. And once I have configured the report the way that I'm interested in it, and I've got everything coming out as expected, then I can save that template. So saving as a template, I'll just call this Tanya's budget by department plus main account. So you can name that whatever name you want. And there is also some security on the back end here for how we use these templates. So in this case, when I save the template, there is an approval feature that causes the user to need to approve, causes an admin to need to approve those features, those templates before they're used. So it's gone into, and I'm just pulling my other window over here, into this template area. So here's Tanya's template, and you can see here that it's got all of the information that I've entered when I saved it. In this case, once it's marked as active, it's available and will show in the drop-downs, but I can also add a user group to it. So if there's a specific user group only that I want to be able to see this particular template, then I can control that by entering a user group in this area in the template itself. So there are some security features there. One of the other things I will point out is you can also create a template that users don't actually use to run a report, but are simply used to export the data. So if you wanted to export the data, you can select to export the data and select a directory for that export, and you can export that in batch at a cyclical time or when required, and you will find that that export is created and generated to the file. Obviously, it does need to have correct permissions to access the directory you want to save it in, so there's a validation button there as well. So you do have the option to export these reports into a directory based on a schedule. All right, so that was a lot of information to cover on this first form, but you'll see in the subsequent forms we're going to cover, the concepts are very similar. So again, the key points here, looking at any financial dimensions I choose, at any date periods I choose, adding filtering as required, saving it as a template, and again, just clicking that calculate button, easily updating and showing me the relevant information. So I'm going to go ahead and close this form, and I'm just going to jump back over to my slide deck. So the next area I would like to show you is budgeting by budgeting group. So this, if you are using budget groups within your organization, this is very relevant and very interesting. If you're not, then this will not provide you any additional insights. If you are using budget groups, it can be very challenging to get information about your budgets by that particular budget group. So again, you likely want to be able to see that information broken down using financial dimensions, but instead of just looking at an overview by financial dimension, you want to see it grouped by budget group. So this will provide us with that. Again, the same sorting capabilities, the same export to Excel, the same export to file, and the same options to save the reports for later consumption. All right, so I'm going to give you a demo and we'll take a look now at what that functionality looks like. So again, budget groups are a configuration and that allows an organization essentially to pool budget funds by various dimensions. So you will know if you're using this. If you're not using this, this may look a little new to you. It is something that is turned on when the budget control is enabled within the solution. So again, I've just pulled up here, and sorry, let me close that. Under the same advanced budgeting and procurement, under the inquiries, instead of going in the budgeting financial dimensions where I started before, I'm in the budgeting by budget group. So the expense budget analysis by budget group is where we're going to start. The very same concepts exist here, and the form should look hopefully very familiar, where I'm looking at a template, I'm looking at the report parameters, the analysis section, and the totals. In this case, though, there is an additional tab for financial dimensions, and that's going to show us the breakdown of the budget group information by financial dimension. So I'll show you what that looks like now. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the budget manager persona. So again, you can save templates for personas or specific people as required and set security on that. And I'm just going to bypass here the general parameters, and we'll cover that in more detail afterwards. I'm going to go in now and click on the calculate button. So here we go. In this case, I've got some specific budget groups, and by budget group, I can quickly look at the funds that are available, the original, and all of the additional information we saw in the budgeting by financial dimension, so the percent used and so on. So there is the budgeting by budget group. But what I really want to look at is what is the breakdown by financial dimension, by my relevant financial dimension for that specific budget group. So if I expand that screen there, and sorry, my resolution is maybe a little funny. I don't think that's going to help. You can see here that I can look at now the breakdown of each of my budget groups by specific financial dimensions. So in this case, I'm looking at by fund and by main account. So for each fund main account, I've got that same overview of information, the same information, and again, that same roll up, roll down. So if I want to look just by fund, for example, and that maybe gives me a little more area on my screen. So if I'm looking at the specific facilities budget group, then I can look at just the fund, or I can drill down further and look to the fund and main account. So I'm just going to minimize this. So I've highlighted facilities, and that's why I'm looking at that breakdown. If I switch over now to finance, and I apologize, my screen resolution is maybe a little bad right now. If I switch on to finance, now you'll see when I expand this window, I'm looking specifically at the finance budget group, and I'm looking at the fund, department, and main account. So there is a setting in the background where we can tell the system which specific dimension combination I'm interested in per budget group. So that is a setting, that's setting based. So you can see that it was a little bit different when I looked at the facilities. And I just expand that again, looking at fund and main account, to when I looked at the finance area, and in the finance, I'm looking at fund, department, and main account. So whichever is relevant by budget group, you can control that using a configuration. So again, some really powerful insights, some really powerful details into your budgets by budget group, using the same roll up, roll down, and again, the same ability to set up and save the template as required. So the same sort of features, same sort of functionality. So hopefully it looks relatively familiar. I'm just going to drop down this general screen now, and we'll keep the analysis open so we can look at it a little more. In this analysis, in the general form, I can set up exactly how I want the report to run. In this case, I can select a specific budget model if I'm interested. Again, the same date codes from to date and from date. I can also select the ledger calendar that is appropriate, and that is relevant if we're using these view by functions here. So I can choose to view by total, by fiscal period. I could show the net changed, or I can show the accumulated. So if I do change those options here, you'll see that it's cleared my form because I do need to recalculate. And when I recalculate that, it's showing me instead by fiscal period here, so you can see my fiscal year in that case. So I do have options to show the total or by fiscal period when I'm running that report. So when I have finished setting up the report to run as I want it to run, again, I can save that as a template using that button click. And that will allow me to repeat this report over and over and over by just selecting my template that's relevant and by clicking on calculate. So there we go. So that is the budget analysis by budget group. And I'm just going to now jump back to my PowerPoint. The next area I wanted to show you was the purchase order payment status. So in addition to the functionalities that allow us to budget by financial dimension or view financial dimensions by budget group, we also have some additional information that we've built into the purchase order payments status. So this shows us purchase order status by line, by any financial dimension combination that we're interested in. It also includes the original amount, the invoiced amount, and the balance of those purchase order lines. But what's more is it does provide us, again, the financial dimension combinations associated with that purchase order. So it is some really detailed information, a lot more information than you'd regularly see in those standard purchase order reports. The rest of the information, very similar templates. You can save those templates that you create. You can export to Excel, export to file, and save those reports for later consumption. So with having said that, let's just jump in and we'll go ahead and we will view that information. So I'm just gonna come out of my, oops, a little too soon there, sorry. Come out of there and go back into AX, and we will come back here into the public sector advanced budgeting and procurement module. So the last area I wanted to cover was the purchase order payment status inquiry. So again, this is going to show us purchase order information. And apologize, let's open the window on my other monitor again. There we go. So when I've got the purchase order information out here, again, this form should hopefully start looking fairly familiar to you now. I can select my relevant template, or I can set up what's interesting or relevant to me when I'm running the report. So I'm going to go ahead and select the template here for the mayor, finance, and budget directors. And you can see that what's relevant to that particular persona is the fund, business unit, and object class. So whatever financial dimensions are being used, whatever financial dimension sets are available, are how you can slice and dice this information. So that's pulled up that particular information, and I'm just going to minimize the general tab here and click on calculate so we can get down to the meat of the information. In this case, what I'm seeing is the purchase order number, the line, the date, the vendor account, Then I've got my financial dimensions. So in this case, business unit, fund, and object. And I'm just going to scroll over to the right here because it is a lot of information. And then at the end of this, you can see I've got my original amount, my invoiced amount, my balance, and if that purchase order line has been finalized. So a lot of information. Again, the powerful part about this, what's very interesting, is the ability to see that information by purchase order line, including that breakdown of financial dimensions. And again, this is something that I can export to Excel at any time, so I can review and modify or do math or summate or whatever I need to do very quickly. I can also get back to the purchase order from here. So there's my purchase order number that allows me to navigate back to that. So I do have the information there for exactly the overview of what's relevant to me. So those same filtering options apply. If, for example, I was only interested in a particular business unit 510, then I can add financial dimension filters here. So I can select that business unit. The same simple and advanced query functionality exists, so I can toggle between the simple and advanced and build a more dynamic query. And again, I can also choose to roll up and roll down if I've got particular groups or columns that I'm interested in. So very dynamic, very configurable, and once I've got everything set up as I want it to, I can save that as a template and I can run that over and over again. And apologize, my screen resolution's a little bad. Run that over and over again as needed to show me the information I'm interested in. One of the other things that I will point out to you that's a little different in this report compared to the other ones we've looked at is I can choose to show zero balance lines or not. So if I don't want to see those zero balance lines, I can deselect that option, and when I calculate here, they are not going to be shown on the report. So let me just scroll over here. You can see that only lines that have a balance that is not zero are now showing. So that makes it a little tidier when I'm looking at it. So a lot of information there in the purchase order payment status inquiry. So I'm just going to close that. So that really completes what I wanted to show you. Again, it's not the full feature set. I've only covered 3 of the specific inquiries: the expense budget analysis by financial dimension, by budget group, and the purchase order payment status inquiry. Again, each of those inquiries is also available as a report, and they can be exported using a batch schedule as desired into a location if you've set it up that way. I've also got some save options, so I can save those reports as needed, and when saved, those are going to show up over here in the periodic area. So I could pre-calculate in the periodic area, and they'll show up in the common area. My apologies. So those reports: saved budget analysis calculation, saved budget analysis calculations by financial dimension, and so on. So if I've saved a report at a specific point in time for a specific purpose, and you give it a name when you do that, then you can access those in that common area, provided that you've got access to do that. So again, there is security set up in this module. I'm logged in as an admin, but if someone shouldn't be seeing the setup forms, for example, there is a way to control that they can't see that by their specific security roles. Excellent. So that's the overview I wanted to share with you today for the advanced budgeting and procurement section. And I'm just going to flip back over to my slide deck here. Oops, and it's swapped my displays, so sorry. If there are any questions, there are the contact details. You can contact Amir or info@advantico.com.